I am checking in with you to share a bit of information, a bit of news that I just got. Let's see. And I haven't done this in a car before, so bear with me. Okay. All right, that should work. Yeah, so I'm on my way to go get my daughter, and I thought I'd come on live and talk to you all a little bit about this DEI ban. And I wanted to talk to you about it because I found myself affected by it, and I didn't expect to be. So I'm a person with multiple streams of income. I have a lot of work that I do in my 9 to 5, but I also have different contracts that I execute throughout the year as supplemental income to support things like taking my daughter into a school program. And so I was minding my business when I opened up my personal email to see that I was actually affected by the DEI ban. As it turns out, the way that the ban was defined, my contract with the NASA program that I was working on as a subcontractor was canceled effective immediately. So a huge part of my supplemental income was just affected, which makes everything so much more complicated in my world. It was already going to be a hard run, but it's just really goes to show you that when it comes to our working lives, we have to be ready for almost anything. And this sucks especially because I'm a single working mom. And, I'm doing everything the way that I was taught to do it, working hard, getting the degree in a morally correct way, trying to treat people like, they want to be treated, and being considerate, living by the platinum rule, not just the golden rule. So it absolutely blows, just kills me that as I face the rest of this weekend, I get to stare down the barrel of job loss. It really is like a surprising thing, and it's got me feeling some type of way. But I don't know, I just had to come on and say that, because it's grinding my gears. And it's making me want to swear, because we work really hard, as people. To have someone turn around and just undo all of that because they don't like an idea that they didn't bother to read about, is kind of killer. But it makes me wonder whether or not people legitimately know what DEI even is. And I'm not sure the answer is yes. So for the rest of this time that we are together, I just want to talk about what is DE&I. So let's start with what it's a response to. Diversity, equity, and inclusion came about in the professional sphere as a means to correct for a race-conscious system that prevented people of color from being employed on the basis of things like their hair, skin, and other appearances that folks associate it with being Black, brown, Asian, or just generally not Caucasian, white. So the idea of DEI was to correct for the lack of merit that has been the preeminent factor for hiring in the United States and internationally, you could argue as well. But when we think about the individual components of DEI, it gets a little bit more interesting. So DEI is diversity, equity, and inclusion. Diversity is a fact. It's who's in the room. And we evaluate the amount of diversity based on the amount of difference in a given space. So diversity simply means difference. It's not like a magical term. It doesn't do anything. Diversity just is or isn't. Either there are people in a space that have any difference or there are not. And different from depends on your position. So for many folks who center whiteness, diversity is considered anything that isn't white. If you're centering heterosexuality, it's anything that's not cis heterosexual. If you're centering gender, it's anything that's not cis male. Cis meaning same. It's not a word. It's a prefix. And really just centering any particular identity. And it goes based on not only the numerical majority, but also a power majority. So think of it like poison. I'm trying to think of something more positive than poison, but I can't. You can say that there's only one drop of poison in this cup, but I don't think that a person would drink it if that poison was poison hemlock. And that's not because they don't love water. It's because it's not worth the risk of getting sick drinking poison hemlock. So you actually change the power of the entire volume of the cup, right? That could be full of water with one drop of something else. When you're thinking about that in terms of diversity and power, right? It could be a whole group of people who are, let's say, gay, right? And there could be one person, right, who's present, who centers their heterosexuality, that totally changes the trajectory of the conversation, or who totally changes the way that a process operates, because they have the power in the conversation, even though they are not the majority in the group. Socially speaking, since it's still normalized to be heterosexual, that heterosexual person is going to be the one who is taken for granted their positions and still can basically set up a group of people to respond to who and how they are, rather than be sensitive to and consistently thoughtful of the predominating identities in the group, unfortunately. So that's the D in DEI. The E is equity. That's saying, given that everyone doesn't have the same starting point, and that sometimes those starting points are different for reasons that are completely unethical and indefensible, like I was born with a race that isn't white, or I was born in a body that was not assigned male at birth. Equity says, well, if we don't think that that was a fair start, how do we adjust for the gaps and the differences that are literally only there because of an unfair system. Oh, they're doing outdoor dismissal today. Okay, I'm gonna go around and pick her up. Let me just make sure no one is crossing the street. But yeah, that's what that means. How do I respond to an unfair system fairly and create the conditions for fairness to persist, even as a system has been unfair? And the I is inclusion. And inclusion is basically what you do to try to make sure that everyone who could be present has the opportunity to actually be a participant and a full participant in a given scenario. So for example, I can say that I'm having a party and it's going to be great and everyone is invited. But if I make that party inaccessible because it's down the stairs, or I don't give you the location, actually, let me put it this way. If I invite you to a party and I don't give you the location for that party, well, you may have been invited, but there's no way that you're included because you don't know where to go. You haven't been truly incorporated into that invitation, not truly. And that's basically inclusion in a nutshell. It's making sure you don't just invite people, but that you give them directions, that you give them the location. Yeah. So none of that sounds like being unfair or hiring people on the basis of a lack of merit, because it's not. And honestly, if people understood what DE&I was, we wouldn't have this response. I think what folks are really, truly afraid of is that people want retribution and that they're afraid that people who've been marginalized will treat the power majority the same way that they have treated people who have been marginalized. That's my word on that. But I'm super sad, I'm super disappointed, and I hope that for everyone else who's also been affected by this, that you hang tough. This is not my usual content for this page, so I may or may not keep it up. But, you know, as a single working person with a child in a very expensive program, knowing that a huge part of my income has just been shut off is terrifying. And yeah, whether you hate DE&I or not, there are real people who do this work, and you probably could learn something from them if you stopped attacking their jobs. I know I'm not speaking to the people who actually do it, because you'll never see this video. But God, I wish you would. Anyway, I hope that no matter where you are, how you are, that you are happy, healthy, and well. I'm gonna go get my daughter, but I will talk to you real soon in the next one.